charter to a shelter, the first male shelter for Africans in Canada. It's called Mandela House. And Mandela House was an initiative by a Nigerian that was put together because when people go through domestic violence in their marriages, usually the women call the police. And once they call the police on you, you are either flirting with jail or you are flirting with deportation kind of. So what they did was to create that initiative, Mandela House, where if you're having an altercation with your wife, you can easily go to Mandela House and they can house you for a long time. And so I was designing an intervention for the men in the Mandela House. We're trying to figure out what was going on and how it seems that a lot of African and Nigerian men were losing their marriages out here. And some of the research reports we're finding out showed that the last set of people to adapt to the Canadian system or the North American system generally are the men. That's if they ever adapt. Now, the other thing we found out was that many of us don't understand that there's a systemic clash. In Africa, the hierarchy is the man, the woman, the children. In North America, the hierarchy is the child, the women, in some countries, the dogs, before the men. And so, that's a counterculture. And so, a lot of our men come with emotions to a system that is well built. And so you are clashing with a system, and if you don't understand the nuances of the system, it becomes problematic. But I'll take us back to history, and I'm glad someone mentioned it earlier on. Now, the first world power was ancient Egypt, if you're a student of history. And then Africa's got quite a number of global power before now. But if you look at their entire history, there was the same thing that included all of them. It was infighting. Right? And so instead of them collaborating to take on other territories, they'll be fighting from within themselves. And before you know it, they can't collaborate to do greater things. And it's the same thing if you look at colonization, the first coming of Africans to North America. When they left Africa, the first thing that happened was a name change. Once your name changes, your identity has changed. The second thing was fractured history because they divided people into various homes. So your father will likely go to another master. They never saw themselves anymore. So fractured history, right? And then in fighting, there was a divide and rule. So historically, if you look at the black Americans, because I live in America and I work with them, you would see a lot of contention, a lot of strife, a lot of hatred, even for the new Africans who are coming in. Now, this is the second coming. And I always say to men that if you don't understand the timing and what is happening, right, you will struggle. Because what is happening is, for the first time, many of us are extending the frontiers of our family to North America. So you are likely the first ancestor in North America from your family. And then you brought your children here who are not likely going to return to Africa, who are going to get married to maybe Canadians and white women, and then another dynasty is being built here. But how we are going to build that dynasty is what I want to talk to you about, because you need to be very intentional about it. So I was just sharing here that part of what I do is to work with the super rich, the 1% of the 1%, to build what they call the family office, which is something Dangote has. Ashus?
Yes, sir.
Interestingly. And every time I sit with these guys, they want to build a family systems office, which is like an office that takes care of everything they own and what will happen afterwards. The first meeting I usually have with them, I notice the pattern. These guys don't ask to build a 1-year, 10-year plan. They usually ask for 7 generational plan, which is 210 years, right? And so, for the first time, I'm beginning to understand why the super rich continue to be super rich, and then, because these guys think 210 years. So imagine you are contending with someone who is building for 210 years, right? By the time you get to 210 years, only God knows how many years they would have gone ahead of you, right? And so I started asking my colleagues to say, why is this information scarce among us? And then it dawned on me that many of us would rather compete than collaborate or readily share information that can move us forward. Now, I have learned that a rich man in the midst of 6 poor men is the 7th poor man in disguise, only a man of fact. Right? And I don't live here fully. I mean, my realtor is here, Benga. So he got me my first house when my family was going to get a house here. But you see, before we got that house, we went around. And there was an experience I found that never left me. We went to a particular house to inspect a particular house, and it was full of Indians. There were 11 families in there. 11. I saw beds under the staircase, saw beds everywhere. It was like a madhouse. So they were moving out. So I asked them why they were moving out and why they all had to live like that. So they said to me that when they got to Canada, they realized that the houses were going for like 2,100. And then they felt it would be counterproductive for 11 families to pay 2,100 to different landlords. So they decided to stay together. And they took a decision that until the final family, until the 11th family got the third property, they weren't going to move out. So I said, why are you guys moving out? They said the 11th family just got their third property and that it was now time to move out. I said, so to go and do what? He said to go and replicate the model.
Whoa.
And then so I looked at my wife and I said, can this ever happen in a community?
No, absolutely not.
Right. So that's the narrative that we need to change. Because as much as we entrench that narrative and we regurgitate that narrative, our children will hear us and they'll believe that they can collaborate together. And that's why I believe this meeting is very important. Because as men, what you need to normalize to build is systems. And the most important system you need to build is what we call the family governance system. So if you are running a family, and then I ask you to tell me the vision of your family, and you can't tell me the same vision, and your wife can't tell me the same vision, word for word, you're already troubled. Right? Because it will then mean that you guys you mean well, but you have different visions for your family. And so you will find argument, you will find contention, and if you understand, I mean, I don't live here, but you say every time I come here, I know all kinds of stories that I have no business knowing. Yeah, because our community don't manage information properly, right? They are talking to you about this person, don't talk to this person, don't talk to that person, don't talk to this person, don't talk to that. And then the women have their meetings where some other ones are mentoring other ones to leave you, right? Because they're telling them that you make more money if you leave your husband. Because this system enables you. Because this system is not actually built to keep families together. Contrary to what is being told. This system is actually built to fracture families, right? And that is why we have to go back to who we were, who we are as Africans. We say it takes a village to raise a child. We will not fully prosper in this land if we don't revert back to our villages. Wherein we come together and begin to say, okay, what template are you using? What template are you using? How can I replicate? Not to compete, but to collaborate so that we can have more stronger people. Have you realized that the least thing many of us bother about in Canada is governance? We bother about businesses, how to make money, but we don't think about how to make the laws. We don't even know some of the laws that are being made, right? And our children are watching us. They're also thinking, go to school, get out of school. But the people who are making the laws are going to continue to rule over them if we don't begin to take our children maybe to city councils to go and even observe proceedings. So the first thing you need to do in building family governance is when you get home, you want to ask your family, if you have children who are a bit grown, ask them if their ideal family can become a reality, what would it look like? Let everyone talk or let them write it out. Let them read it out. Once they read it out, you can build a family vision out of it. After you have a family vision, you need to create your family values. Because values will govern how your children behave. Every time I come, parents want their teenagers to talk to me because a lot of teenagers are not in talking terms with their father. I was taking a class last year in Canada, and a 14-year-old, we're asking them what their greatest aspiration were. And then the boy said that his greatest aspiration was to kill his dad.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. And then we had to put a call to his dad, and his dad could actually vouch that they were best of friends. But meanwhile, it wasn't true. Because the boy was looking at the way the father was treating his mother, and he was always very upset about his father. In fact, he told me right there and then, he said started saving money to buy a gun sometimes when he goes to America, and then he's going to blow his father's head. We have to do a truth meeting. Right? So values are critical, and those values you have to model it. And that's why it's very, very important for you to build a system. Now, your values must become your DNA creed. DNA creed is like Nigeria as a national flag. Nigeria, my country. Your values must become a creed that defines, governs the human behavior within your family. And what it means is that your children must be able to recite your creed regularly, and that's the basis for which you correct them. Now, so I've talked about your family vision, your family values, your DNA creed, then your family legends, which is about the most important. Now, every time I have sessions like this, I always ask, A simple question. So if I ask all of us in this room, how many of us know the name of the man in the 4th generation before you were born? You know his name, you know his greatest achievement. Can I see your answer? 4th generation before you were born. In your family. You know him? That's your great-great-grandfather. But that man did he exist? I mean, he existed, right? Now, there is what we call your family superpower. And that's the lost treasure in many African families. If your history is fractured by the 4th generation before you, what makes you think that 4th generation after you will be remembered? Because we don't document. And that's the edge many of the Jews and the Chinese have over us. Because they document. They celebrate festivals. I mean, Diwali is now a global festival. And Diwali is not just a festival, it's actually a conditioning process because there are demands of Diwali. If you've studied everything you have to do every day, by the time you do that for 21 years of your life, there are some things that have been subliminally built into you. There's a way of thinking that you begin to imbibe as an Indian. Right? So if you don't know the story, I want to send you back home. Look for the oldest person in your lineage and let them tell you the story because you need to document the story. Right? And I've seen fractured history. I was working with a man and he went back and he realized that he was actually a prince but he didn't know. Because if you are a royalty, there's a way that you have to raise your family intentionally. There's what you need to pass to your children. Let me tell you. What will make your child not to take a wrap of marijuana when it's offered by his friend is an identity, is an awareness of who he is. Because every misbehavior we say can be traced to two things: a non-discovery of self and a non-remembrance of self. Once your child knows that, let's say for instance, is from a royal family, if they offer me a wrap of marijuana, there's that awareness to say, I'm a king. I can't do this. Right? It doesn't mean it's wrong for you guys to do it, but I can do it because I know who I am. Now, if your children don't know their history, this land will define them and they'll give it another history that is not theirs. And once there's an imbalance at the realm of their identity, it opens them up to all kinds of things. So you want to go back, find that history, and now create your own history, because part of the history is the fact that you moved out of Africa and you came here. Right? And that history must have a set of vision, must have a set of assignment, must have an expected end. Now, once you created that, which is the most important thing you need to create, the next thing you need to do is to now create a family culture. And family culture is very simple. What you're asking is, what are the things we must do annually as a family? So, for example, you can create a Founders Day. Founders Day was the day you got married, right? It can be your Founders Day, where you bring in people, you celebrate like this, and then you retreat your history and blah. I mean, if you institute that, by the time you are gone, your generation, I mean, a time will come, various chapters of your family and lineage, they will continue to do that. Sure. Then you must find out what are the things you must do twice a year. You need to agree on that. What are the activities that your family must do quarterly? What are the ones you must do weekly, monthly, and maybe daily? Maybe daily can be family altar or something like that. Right? Because the way we were raised out there in Africa is not the way we're raising these children here. And we need to understand that there is nothing wrong with raising them the African way. It's just that we must evolve the African way into a system, because Indians don't change who they are. Right. Right? In fact, I was just telling them that the only places Indians compete against themselves is within India. The moment they step out of India, the goal is to extend the frontiers of India to the rest of the world. In fact, when we started living in Brampton, the first Christmas I spent here, I had to ask my wife, is there Christmas celebration here? And she was like, we are living in India and enclave. Because I didn't see Christmas lights, I didn't see Christmas whatever. I was like, what's going on? He said, it's Indians that are here. And that's why everywhere you find them, they are literally turning the place into Mumbai or New Delhi. Right? But Africans can do the same. But you see, it starts from our family. That's why we said that the most important nation on earth is your family, because your family is the production factor of society. So I've talked about vision, your values, your DNA creed. I've talked about your legends of your family. I've talked about your culture. The final thing is your community. You see, we're not going to be great if we don't build a community. Right? And that's why I'm going to appeal to us. I know that we're from various tribes from Nigeria. Once we step out of Nigeria, it must be one Nigeria. Correct. It cannot be Igbo. It cannot be. I mean, I'm saying this small association, okay, Mercy Society in Canada. What exactly do you intend to achieve if you're Odogbolu community in Canada? right? So everybody becomes president. And then the presidents cannot talk to themselves. And then our community that is very, you know the numbers of the total number of Nigerians in Canada, we're not so many. But that community is fractured because everyone is trying to start their own thing. I think we need to come together because we can collaborate to do greater things. Our history and our legacy in Canada must go beyond African stuff. It must go into high-rise buildings. It must go into governance. It must go into, the Senate or whatever. Our children must become mayors here, right? But you see, if we don't plant the seed in them, it's never going to happen, right? And that's why I'm glad men are here. You are the leaders of your family, and I want you to know that leadership is service here. You've got to serve, but much more than that, you've got to build a system that will stand the test of time, because you cannot respond to this system with emotion. You must respond back with a counter system. The good thing is that the system must not see you coming. And that's why, please, lead your family properly, because there are data that have been predetermined that they're expecting your children to fit into. They must consistently insist that black children get into crime, they get into jail, more than the white children, but we need to change that. Outside of meetings, and I know what they talk about here. So I want to congratulate all of you for coming, and I want to wish you all the best. But you need to understand that if we build a solid family, we'll build a solid community, and then someday we'll have many African mayors, many Nigerian members of parliament, maybe someday a premier, and maybe someday a prime minister. Thank you very much.